I think 2026 will be the hard marker of a radical transition of life as we know it as a human species and the collective consciousness of how our day-to-day world works and operates. And by the end of 2026, I truly believe, I know this is a bold assertion, I believe that 100% of all infrastructure for the ultimate B system will be online by the end of 2026. It's literally iRobot. I mean, have you seen the images coming out of China? It's like these like football stadiums or like airplane hangars with perfectly covered and aligned humanoid robots in alignment, just like iRobot, and then they all move in perfect unison. What would take them 5 years to do in R&D, they can now do in 2 hours through AI.
The world keeps lying, but he won't retreat on his quest for truth. Yeah. Truth, quest for truth. They can't stop me, they can't block me. Moving through, got that fire, they can't block me. Quest for truth, breaking chains, making waves. That's what I do. When they hate, I create.
I'm looking at 2026. You know, it's something you and I have talked about off air a little bit, and I have with other different people. We were recently on with Nino together there a week or two ago, and just talking about the nuances of this, for lack of a better word, like a macro world view of how all these things are intersecting and interconnected. You know, we had talked about Apophis and different things, and we've talked about different aspects of, you know, we'll say the hidden destiny of America. You know, Dr. Tom Horn and many others have done just exceptional expositions about the historicity of all that. And it is to get this understanding of from the geopolitical to the geostrategic to the technocratic to the transhumanistic, you know, and all the little buzzwords that are out there right now within the different truther movements. They're all relevant and they're all prescient, but they actually all are symbiotic, for lack of a better word, when you tie them all together to get this bigger picture to operate out from, to understand the nuances of the micro on the day-to-day. And as I'm looking at 2026, you know, even just thinking about it and processing through this last year, 2025, and then looking, okay, what do we have that's laying in the wings that's getting ready to break out for this coming year? And then obviously the we'll call it the fourth turning, for lack of a better word, Strauss and House fourth turning of even the a transition period, for lack of a better word, for the global collective consciousness of humanity through like Moore's law, which is built into the technological advances going on. And I'm looking at what they're actually doing with AI, not what they've said they're going to do, not what people speculate they're going to do, but what they have actually already done and implemented, the infrastructure that's in place for AI. When I take stock of it all, I know this is a long-winded, wordy intro, but as I take stock of it all, like we were saying, I'm going, this is the final weapon. This is the final weapon. And when I'm using that verbiage of final weapon, I'm the biblical perspective or worldview from which I'm saying it is as it mentions about the Antichrist and the beast system that eventually comes online. It says specifically, and who can make war against the beast. So as I'm pulling this all together, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's actually happening. You know, I'm aware of the nuances of what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, both belligerents in the different battle that's going on, NATO US conglomerate, right? Then you have the Eurasia Eastern conglomerate kind of converging on the battlefields of Ukraine. But what most people don't understand is the primary fascia purpose for the war in Ukraine is only AGI and super artificial intelligence being trained up and being brought online. That's the whole reason for the Ukrainian war. Most people don't understand that. That's why you're seeing these mega salvos of drones and SIGINT that signals intelligence. There's satellite-based intelligence, and then there's signals-based intelligence. There's the technological intelligence. There's all these varying layers. They have these stacks even within the atmosphere of different data points and stacks of aircraft and assets and technological nuanced things that are all communicating to each other because they're actually learning, which is why they're sending the salvos of drones this way and then the salvos of drones this way. And it's this constant interchange of of drone and technological warfare back and forth, because it actually has nothing to do with exacting a kinetic assault against the adversary. So I want everybody to understand that. It has nothing to do with kinetics. Kinetics being the physical explosion on the ground, right? That's when we think about kinetic-based warfare. It actually has nothing to do with kinetic warfare. It's about the intelligence, psychological, and cybernetic warfare components being brought online through artificial general intelligence unto artificial superintelligence. So the entire battlefield of Ukraine, this has been mentioned specifically by Putin himself, but also all of his different top tier cabinet members. And I'll jack up all the Russian names. Sorry, so I won't say them. I know them, but I won't say them because I'll just butcher them. But they have specifically said, and this is where that language came from: who can make war against the beast? They have said, who can make war against NATO, because it's being AI driven. Although there are physical battlefield commanders, there are physical logistics-based commanders, there are physical entities, there are men and women in positions that are ultimately walking out the decisions. They have stated publicly that all battlefield decisions are being made by AI and they can't counter them. So when the AI is taking in this amount of data points, it knows where to move troops, where and how, and to what account, when to move logistics, here, who, where, what, when, why, to what account, how many gallons of fuel, how many blah, 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 how many of this, how many of that, blah, blah, blah. And where to push out different aerial assets based on the signals intelligence that's being brought in and the metadata that's being amalgamated. And AI is making every single decision in order to walk that out. So now you can see that on a microcosm. And now you take into account what's going on with Starshield, based out of Starlink, out of Elon Musk, and that private partner or public-private partnership that's being conducted, which is a mass network of what's ultimately going to be 42,000 satellites interconnected in low Earth orbit that are only operating off of AI in order to communicate with one another, but also to communicate on the ground. And they are they have rolled out what can only be described as counterfeit. I always say counterfeit because they're not God. They want to be like God, right? But counterfeit omniscience and omnipresence. And it has been achieved. It's not future, it has been achieved. And we won't even get into D-Wave quantum computing. We can talk about threat fusion centers and how they're able to filter all this data through threat fusion centers, but they openly talk about, they being the elites and the technocrats and whatever, that they have arrived at a point now where they are all knowing, and they are, in their eyes, in their hubristic Nimrodian arrogance, they are all powerful, and it's through the guise of AI. So when we see all these, the nuanced nature of like the immigration crisis, quote unquote. By the way, it's ridiculous. It's smoke and mirrors, right? Like Obama deported 12.5 million immigrants. Trump has deported 1.5 million. It's an inconvenient truth that the Democrats and the liberals don't want to understand and it's also an inconvenient truth that the MAGA truthers don't want to understand is this has nothing to do with immigration. This has to do with a Hegelian dialectical rollout of your willingness to accept biometric identification. This gets into what went on with the voting and the voting machines, and all that it's a shell game. It's a shell game to get to this point to roll out digital currencies along with biometric identification through AI threat fusion centers for your good, for peace and security, for the protection of your banking accounts from fraud, for the protection of our electoral process, right? So that there can't be fraudulent nature, and you want to know that your vote counts. And then we have all this immigration crisis. So they're actually using all these different nuanced social pressures to get you to clamor and readily receive what has already been put in place. You just don't know it yet. So right now we have on Wall Street, there's no longer humanistic aspects to trading. It's all micro data trading, as in fractions of cents of tradings based on AI. Our bioweapons and our biotech interface within the DoD is all being ran by AI. And there's reports coming out from DARPA, and there's many other institutions, but that's just an easy target for people who are pretty familiar with DARPA, that they're using AI to develop biological weapon systems that is creating amalgamations at a genetic-based level on ways that they said it would have taken the scientists 10 years of research to break these different nuanced protein coatings to create these super bugs, these super biological weapons that are very genetic specific. They said AI is doing it within a half a day.
Wow.
And then then they talk about the chemical warfare connections. Again, everybody can go research all this on their own. It's all white paper documentation. But they're also using it for the chemical weapons-based components. Same thing. These are their words, not mine. AI is doing what would have taken a team of scientists and up to $1 trillion a decade to do. AI is figuring out the molecular compound amalgamations within 15 minutes. And they said it's spitting out these chemical or biological weapons that are terrifying. They say they're terrifying. And this also has come out from DARPA insiders. They said, and the most terrifying part of it is anybody can do this from their basement. Any bad actor can use the same AI programs that we're using to get the same outcome in the same amount of time from their mom's basement. Okay, then we go into the AI-based nature of our, we'll say our propaganda operation, Mockingbird-based propaganda psychological operations thing. Currently, as it stands, AI is able to pull in the metadata from every talk, text, swipe, click, look, view. If you like, let's say you're scrolling on your social media and you stop for less than a scroll of a finger swipe, it grabs that data and it filters it in to these giant AI-based threat fusion center. And that's why all of a sudden you get all these ads for the same thing, because you stalled for 0.01 second longer on that image than you did the other images. And so then it's actually tailoring what you see and what you hear through AI. This is happening we'll just talk Western centrically. This is happening on the conservative side, and it's happening on the liberal side, and it's happening on, the libertarian side. Is their data, their propaganda-based material, their news feeds, their whatever, their clickbait, their doom scrolling, whatever it is being tailored to the individual based on things they don't even know data is being pulled in from them. And there is no longer any human component to these things. It is all AI data driven. Now we get into the church, which we know, like on the super hyper fringe, right? There are churches of AI. They're literally worshiping AI, which is just whatever. That's like the super freak show, right? That's like people talking about how Joel Osteen's apostate. It's like, no kidding, dude. Like, we shouldn't even be talking about that. That's like a no-brainer, right? Like, that has no bearing in any conversation. But they are, AI is being used now. So there was a poll that came out yesterday. Today is the 31st. It's New Year's Eve. Came out yesterday that 75% of American pastors use AI to write their sermons. Okay, so they're not walking by the Spirit. They're not walking by faith. They're not walking in the fear of the Lord. They're not seeking to be a workman approved, one who rightly divides the word of truth and has no need to be ashamed, right? They're not doing anything that God has called. They are literally allowing an artificially intelligent entity. We know where that source of that artificial intelligence is coming from. You and I, your listeners, John, know exactly where that artificial intelligence is coming from. They're allowing that to dictate what the hearers are the sheep of their flocks are hearing with regards to the gospel of Jesus Christ. So when it talks about the way of truth will come into disrepute and no one will tolerate sound doctrine and they'll always be learning but never come to an understanding of the truth, right? It says they'll secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the very God who bought them. And when it talks about the doctrines, they will devote themselves to the doctrines of demons. Now you can see how all of it has come online. All of it has come online within the last year in particular. By the way, for the listeners, AI has been out since 1972 or 3. AI is not, that's how much it's been learning. But now we're at a point where and then you can look at the iconography, whether it's Grok or OpenAI or Sam Altman or all these different tech oligarchs, the technocrats. when you look at the iconography of what they're doing and what they're saying and where they're rolling it out, there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever what comes. So I believe 2026 will be the year that is a definitive eon age transition where everybody will be talking about what it was like before 2026. I think 2026 will be the hard marker of a radical transition of life as we know it as a human species and the collective consciousness of how our day-to-day world works and operates. And by the end of 2026, I truly believe that 100%, I know this is a bold assertion, I believe that 100% of all infrastructure for the ultimate B system will be online by the end of 2026.
That's it. I believe that too, man. And when you mentioned all of these things that are being set up to have people accept AI, biometrics, I mean, scam centers, they're allowing the scam centers to scam people like crazy, and they could easily stop that. I have a 14-year-old son that is a computer programmer, ethical hacker, learning all the different things, and he's created his own AI. And I'm thinking, if my 14-year-old son can create their own AI, and I mean, what are we gonna do here? Because it just give him $1 billion, and he's got enough servers to make this AI just as powerful as Altman's or whatever AI, and probably more than $1 billion. But it's just crazy to me how many people are not even. And my son's doing it ethically. He's keeping it offline and doing all those things. Just it's like a part of his school to learn how to actually do machine learning and all those things. So it's more machine learning than AI, I guess, because I know some AIs are way more advanced and, like you said, pulling from another source, I believe. But you mentioned something that the pastors using AI, and that is a huge problem, man, and it bothers me quite a bit because I can hear it, and everybody knows the AI statement. It's like, this is not this. This is a transformation of whatever, and you hear those key phrases that AI always use. And there's a couple of pastors that I used to follow on Facebook that I thought they used to be awesome. And then they have now every statement they make on Facebook is 100% AI. I mean, their grammar was nowhere near as impeccable as it is now, nowhere near as long, lofty, thought out things. And it's mind blowing to me. And with Trump setting no regulations on AI in states just recently, that happened like a few, I guess a month ago, maybe not even a month ago.
Yeah, and he blocked the states from being able to stop AI, correct?
Yeah. And it's scary. It's scary because they can do so much with AI. And we're looking at possible AI bubble because if you look at the top three companies, you got Oracle, you got ChatGPT, and then you have, I can't remember the name of the other company, but they're all NVIDIA. So I look at I've been following stocks for a long time. I've since I was young, I've been a stock market guy. I'm not saying that I'm a wealthy stock market guy. I've just been a stock market guy. But I look at the cap and I look at how much money they're pulling in, and man, we're talking about a crazy bubble. There's no way it's worth $1 trillion when it's only making maybe a few billion a year. But you see the money coming in, and it's not money from regular investors. It's almost like if you were to put it in your mind, you could have one here, one here, one here, and you have an arrow to each one of them. Well, that's the money flow. You have Oracle putting several hundred million into NVIDIA, then NVIDIA putting 700 million into ChatGPT, and then you have GPT putting several hundred million back into Oracle. So they're basically just circulating this money and building up this multi-trillion-dollar market cap when they're not making that much money. So like they have to succeed. There's no like, it didn't work out or we're going to put an end to this. Like if they put an end to it, we're talking about the destruction of all of the stock market, and we're talking about the depression like we saw back in the day. So that's either going to happen or they're going to go full AGI with it, which obviously we already know what they're doing with it. They put full force into it, no regulations, and AI and China and Russia, man, this is crazy. But weapons testing, you mentioned weapons testing, AI war. What else do you see happening in 2026 that has to do with AI, but also could just pop off? I mean, you see the manipulation of the silver, the gold by China because they're using silver in all their machinery now. The new batteries coming out are going to be silver batteries, and China is literally sweeping up every bit of silver it can. And I believe in the first of this month, like tomorrow, they have a new regulation to where they're using silver as part of one of their programs where they're only buying it from local companies.
And I also believe that I think it takes effect tomorrow. Don't quote me on that, but they will no longer export any silver
That's what it is.
to
Yep.
any other nation.
Yep.
So it's this repatriation on steroids of all things precious metals, rare earth metals, in order because you have this competition, this AI race. So here's what I actually have a friend of mine. He just sent me video. He's with President Trump right now. So he's physically with Trump. He just sent me a picture like, hey, we were blah, blah, blah. And so I only say that to say is that he's uh what Trump's understanding, right? So again, I'm speculating, but just understanding generalities of geopolitics and stuff like that this is the next arms race because although let's say you and I with a biblical worldview, we know where it goes, right? It only ends and there's only one end game for this new arms race of AI. So, but from a secular humanist perspective or from a central planner or a military industrial complex or geopolitics or an economic standard, I can intellectually understand why the US, this administration must push as hard and as fast as they can for all things AI because Russia and China are doing the same thing. And whoever does achieve this, we'll call it singularity. I know that's a big catchphrase, but this singularity within the Internet of Things, the Internet of Bodies, and its AA counterparts. Because remember, we talked about it's economic, it's biotech, it's biological interface, it's militaristic interface, it's geopolitics interface, it's decision making and rapid speed pulling in all these data points. Like AI isn't just about being able to write your Word document faster and better without doing any research. The applications to it are beyond comprehension. So you have this global arms race right now for AI, and it really is East versus West. And if we look at it biblically, again, this is where I always want to bring it back is a biblical worldview, is you do have an East versus West. You have the armies of the East, and then you have everybody else that's going on that are going to have this convergence and then this wrestling out the Antichrist. By the way, if people pay attention to the scriptures, there's not a unity of effort under the Antichrist. He has to war and fight to consolidate power. It's not what people think because of Hollywood movies that like I know the language of the Bible, it does say the whole world marvels after him. Now that's a generalization because there are the armies of the North and the armies of the South, and they come against one another. And after warring against this, like there is infighting for control of this new collective consciousness-based technocratic amalgamation. And so from that perspective, I understand geostrategically why the US under this administration is pushing so hard and so fast. What I'm not so sure that they understand, maybe they do and they just don't care, is the end game. The end game is a communistic, socialistic, hyper spiritualized amount. It's meshing together. There's a symbiosis to a communistic, socialistic component, social credit score, all that stuff, centralized government is God, with a hyper spirituality of everything is worship based on a new collective consciousness, spiritual plane, Christ consciousness based intersecting of the two things at the same time. That's what these guys are in competition with. So I'm going to switch gears from that. I know that's kind of long-winded, but shift gears from that because I didn't answer your question about what else do I see coming in with this AI. Pay attention to what's going on with the humanoid aspect of what they're doing with AI. Elon Musk has said he wants 1 million humanoid robots. Trump has publicly announced he wants, don't quote me on this, I think he mentioned something about 1 million humanoid robots. China has rolled out 1 million humanoid robots. And what's unique about that right now is it's literally iRobot. I mean, have you seen the images coming out of China?
Yeah,
it's like these like football stadiums or like airplane hangars with perfectly covered and aligned humanoid robots in alignment, just like iRobot, and then they all move in perfect unison. And the reason why I bring up the humanoid robot, because this gets into the depopulation agenda and all these other different aspects too, but they have integrated AI into the development of so the R&D aspect of humanoids, they're utilizing AI. And again, what they're saying is 5 years, not 10 years. What would take them 5 years to do in R&D, they can now do in 2 hours through AI. So these humanoid robots, they're not incrementally growing in their capabilities. They're exponentially growing in their capabilities. Huge mathematical distinction to make is when something's exponentially changing. And their movements, their capabilities, their longevity, their battery life, their whatever, the mechanics and the pistons and the hydraulics and everything that goes into making them they are distinguishable from a human being. If you've seen the recent videos coming out of both China and DARPA, because you got that weapons arms race going on, you would not be able to tell that it is robotic in any way, shape, or form if you put some synthetic flesh on it. They move with such smoothness and agility, and I mean, their facial expressions, everything, you would have no concept. And so
it reminds me real quick. It reminds me,
yeah.
like, in the Bible where it says that the mark of the beast, it's a number of a man. And I often think, like, in my mind, I've thought this several times, and of course I'm not dogmatic on this because there's a lot of theories that people have had about the mark of the beast, but it almost makes you wonder if it's going to be something that distinguishes human from machine. Like, if you're a human, you have to get this, otherwise you could be thought of as a machine. I've always thought that that's not always. Within the last few years, I've thought that that's becoming more of a possibility, because right now you can't hardly distinguish if you're talking to somebody online if they're AI. You can't really distinguish, and if they got flesh now and they're able to put themselves in that, you definitely won't be able to distinguish them.
Yeah, and actually to add to that and I'm in agreement with that conclusion, although it's speculation. We're all speculating, right? We won't know till after the fact, but it's informed speculation. And from that, even that basis of informed speculation, I look at the kingdoms of Daniel and the last one being that amalgamation, that mixing the miry clay with iron. And this is just my opinion, is that it's as we're growing in this technocratic based age, you can see more and more clearly that it's probably more this biotech interface, which is not the Internet of Things, but the IOB, the Internet of Bodies. So it is actually a mixing of iron, what would be silicon, right? These elemental metal elements and stuff to make the technological processes interfacing with the biology, the human biology. So I definitely see that as being extremely relevant. And again, you can get into the Kurzweils and the blah, 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 and all the different futurists and the Noah Yuval Harari, which I think is a false prophet. I think he's the counterfeit John the Baptist for the beast kingdom. That's my personal opinion on Noah Yuval Harari. And I believe Elon Musk is a false prophet. He's a prophet. He's constantly prophesying what's coming next. And it says many false prophets will arise and deceive many, right? So there's a lot of them out there, but there's a couple key figures playing on the stage right now. I mean, not Sam Altman, what's his name? Peter Thiel, right? I mean, this guy is running the circuit doing nothing but talking about the Antichrist as he's developing the beast system for the Antichrist, going, but yeah, no, that doesn't relate to me. But let me tell you, as a homosexual technocrat who's developing the beast system, about the book of Revelation and start teaching you the gospel. Have you heard all that stuff?
Yeah,
I mean, dude, not knocking Sean Ryan. I think it's amazing that he has all these guests coming on, but it's like guest after guest after guest after guest from this technocratic world is coming on, and every single one of them is propagating the great deception, selling it as if it's the greatest utopic, counterfeit millennial reign that's ever going to be loosed on humanity, and everybody should give themselves over to it because it's gonna do away with the disparaging inequities and the economic inequities and the cultural religious inequities and the governmental corruption inequities, and so we should adopt these things to create a millennial reign devoid of Christ. That's what they're all after, right? Everybody needs to understand. They're after a millennial reign devoid of Christ. That's the end goal. And that's the deception that even NAR and even this new Erica Kirk, sorry to trigger all the people out there, but this new Erica Kirk Christianity, we'll call it MAGA Christianity, state sponsored. Everybody picking up on that? What I said? It is state sponsored Christianity, just like China has, is rising up through JD Vance, which anticipate him being your next president, by the way. Side note on that. But they're all taking us somewhere while we're unaware. And it's through these technological processes. And what most people don't understand is how much infrastructure is in place. When we talk about these data collection centers, threat fusion centers, those have been out for a long time. That's more through DHS, NSA, little bit of FEMA. There's a couple other intelligence collection communities, signals intelligence collection communities out there that most people have never even heard of. You can go do your own research. There's so many different, and I have several friends in multiple varying disciplines within those signals intelligence gathering communities. But what they have the capabilities of, most people can't fathom. The data collection centers that are under the ocean, the data collection centers that are in the old salt mines, you know, in the Ozark Mountains and everything else, the data collection centers that are in these crazy places you can't even understand because the cooling requirements of them are so incredibly high. They're already in place. So when Trump says $500 billion with a B for new AI data centers to be built all across the US, that's a public optics based statement, triggering statement to get the polls and to get the whatever, to get the interest, to kind of trigger people and do a soft sell on this thing on things that they've already had for over a decade. So it's all smoke and mirrors to things that they already have the capability as. And when we talk about metadata, I know your listeners, John, are going to be aware of it, but you really can't, like right now. So I'm on the road. So obviously I'm not in my office. I'm in a spare guest house at somebody else's property. As I'm looking across, I'm like, there's a smart fridge, there's a smart whatever. I'm in a kitchen, game room area, whatever, and like smart stove, smart this, smart that, smart TV. Every single one of them is passively pulling in every voice print data analysis of every word I've ever spoken since we've been on this interview. And they actually have the capability to take it from every individual and then filter it and then create, for lack of a better word, dossiers on each unique individual. And by the way, this isn't unique to the West. Niger, the country of Niger in Africa, just rolled it out yesterday for every citizen in their country. The country of India, which I believe has currently surpassed China as the most populated city in our populated nation state in the world, is India, has rolled it out for every one of their citizens. We're talking about slum dogs. Everybody, biometric identification with a central bank digital currency tied directly to them. I think they're at 1.3 or 1.4 billion individuals. Wow. The country in Niger has rolled it out. Rwanda has rolled it out. Eritrea has, I'm talking nations that can't even, they have no infrastructure whatsoever, yet they've brought online AI-based biometric data systems for every individual in their nation that have never even touched a computer or gotten online. How is that possible? So we're not talking about this is Western-centric unique. This is global. And by the way, if most people aren't familiar with this, the Chinese-based social credit score, that was specifically implemented by the United States of America's Silicon Valley. 100%, not Chinese tech companies. Do your research. Our Silicon Valley was sent over there at the behest of our government in coordination, symbiotic coordination with the CCP to refine the AI systems for a social credit score. Because they have a totalitarian government, they knew that they could beta test it and work out the kinks and do all the recoding and everything that they need to do over a longitudinal process of 10 years to perfect it in China, which is under a totalitarian regime, before they rolled it on the American citizens because of our entitlement to freedom and privacy. So they knew that they had to master it. They had to master it every little data kink here, because if there was one chink in their armor, the American mentality, manifest destiny, self-reliant, still we still got that gruffy, like screw you, Great Britain kind of mentality, right? That's just the American mentality. So that's why it was at the behest of our DoD and our intelligence communities and our political class, our policymakers, to perfect it in league with the CCP before they brought it back online into the United States of America. Our Silicon Valley did that, just like they're doing in Ukraine, as we talked about, with all the integrated combined arms aspects of modern war fighting is being ran strictly through AI to train the AI how to achieve artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence.
It's frightening too, especially since they just rolled out 7G. I heard Trump talking about that. How does that play a role in this?
So the pressure. So this is where I get out. I can get into prepper stuff too. I'm big on that, and I've been training people around the nation for a long time on different aspects of that. But this is where I get into my personal take on. I can't say categorically reject. That's kind of too strong, but I reject the notion of EMP and the threat of EMPs. Although I'm aware of the capability of EMP technologies, whether it's low Earth bursts, 300 kilometers off the thing, blah, 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 like follow all the different processes with regards to EMPs, the EMP commissions, and the threats to our power grid, which is significant. However, I always go back to a biblical worldview. So I go, biblical worldview, not going to happen. It's an impossibility. No nation is going to allow it to happen. I believe that there's agreements and documents that have been signed behind closed doors that it's never going to happen, because the entirety of the nature of the beast system is ubiquitous technological control, including the fact that the bodies of the two witnesses are viewed by the whole world for 3.5 days. Everybody sees the same thing. Everybody experiences the same thing. Everybody's controlled by the same thing. This even gets into the aspects of the mark of the beast. When I came to know the Lord at 25, and just started devouring the word right away. I'm 44 right now for the listeners out there. I'm 44. And I always couldn't be like, but how would they know? Like, as a new believer, I'm reading Revelation, like, how would they know if I just didn't give an allegiance to the Antichrist? How could they know? How could I would just say that I did, or whatever, like playing all these tactical mental gymnastics on how that would play out. Remember, this was before really cell phones weren't even a big deal. I had a flip phone or whatever. Like, there was no such thing as this high level of technology. That's how quick this Moore's law, this increase of technology has happened. But now we can see how exactly they actually would know all things at all times about every person, including the biorhythms of your body. So that means a built-in polygraph, for lack of a better word. And this is why all the wearables that people have been getting used to, I've told people for 10 years, that's a soft sell. Every upgrade phone, oh, now you need an iPhone 17. No, now you need I'm like, this is getting you used to always the next rollout of tech that you want it, because it increases convenience or something like that. I'm like, the wearables are going to get to the place where it's implantables, because it's about the metadata based on your biorhythms, because your biorhythms will dictate your social credit score standing, even your health, what you're putting in your body, what you're putting out to your body, your carbon-based credits that you would be allotted is all going to be based even on your biorhythm capabilities. And I'm like, and you will never be able to quote unquote lie or deceive or manipulate or get out from around your allegiances to the government, because it's literally linked to your biorhythms, and they'll know instantly. Because I'm like, how would they know who had the mark or who didn't have the mark? How would they know if you'd given your allegiance and given yourself over to worship the beast, or if you were just faking it? How would they know? Well, now they will. And so as I see these techs coming, this technology not coming online, that is currently online, I'm realizing truly how late the hour actually is. And so when it says suddenly, in an instant, that's the language all throughout scripture. In the suddenly, in an instant, suddenly, in an instant, in a single day, in a single hour, and then suddenly, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly, as a labor pains upon a woman, suddenly these things, when whatever the precursing softening tactics, whether it's World War III, which is going to be spun as it's the Battle of Armageddon. So you receive a counterfeit Christ thinking it's a millennial reign. It's just going to be World War III. It's not the Battle of Armageddon. That happens way later on, right? Or whether it's another pandemic-based thing, a biological, chemical warfare-based thing, global economic collapse, which sears the collective consciousness through traumatic, ritualistic, traumatic abuse over the whole face of the earth, whether it's Project Bluebeam and a fake alien invasion, whatever it is, however they roll this thing out, the traumatic experience is going to happen in an instant, and then the solution through this ubiquitous AI-based infrastructure is going to be handed to you in an instant as well too. It's not going to take years. It's not even going to take months. When I look at the data from start to finish to the full implementation of the B system, I think it's a matter of 6 weeks from start to finish, and everything is online.
Man, do you ever, I think about this sometimes, do you ever think about like when we speak out about these things? So obviously this is all recorded, everything is listening, AI knows what we're saying here. Do you ever think about like AI retribution? I don't know if you've ever watched the show Persons of Interest that had Jim Caviezel on it.
Yep.
Did you ever think about that? I mean, I do. I'm like, man, this is scary, really.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you overlay, we'll say the AI retribution, AI threat fusion centers, AI counterfeit omniscience and omnipresence with drone tech, that's where I think you're going to see things that you can't even know and understand. People that have listened to me for a while, I've had some dreams and visions from the Lord, not a lot. That's not like a charismatic or anything that's like every day having something great, but I've had some that is like definitively from the Lord. And one in particular, and this was before drone swarm, way before, we're talking 10 years ago, and of swarms of drones operating as like a flock of birds or whatever, how they can stay equidistant from each other and change speed. And I saw them kamikaze detonating on Christian enclaves, exclaves and enclaves across the US all at one time. It was horrifying. About 3 years later, the movie Angel Has Fallen, that shouldn't be lost on anybody, came out with Gerard Butler. And the opening sequence was these drone swarms that were attacking POTUS, right? And the Secret Service detail. And I was like, stop the movie. Like, I was like, that's exactly, because nobody had seen anything like that before. And actually in the movie, when that rolled out, Angel Has Fallen rolled out, drone swarm and drone tech in modern battlefield was never a thing. And in fact, I think at that point, DARPA had never even released videos of the capabilities of a hive mind drone swarm. None of that had come out yet. It was being released as predictive programming within the movie, as if it was some sci-fi based futuristic capabilities of modern warfare. Well, now we know that is the standard of modern warfare now. And if anybody wants to go watch that opening sequence of Angel Has Fallen, that was to the detail, I mean, extreme detail of exactly a vision that I had received from the Lord with regards to Christians 10 years prior to that movie coming out.
And we know there's a major depopulation agenda going on. We've heard a lot of the elites talk about how we need to lower the populations by a lot of different means. But you mentioned drones and the idea that if they do have these dossiers, which we know they do, I mean, they've had dossiers on people for so long. I mean, and now it's just even more advanced. Of course, they can even read body language, everything. But you also mentioned earlier weapons, biological weapons being used and tailored to genetics, right? And then also our cars, most of our cars, if they weren't made before I think the 90s, they have a computer in them that is hackable. And there's so many ways that they could get to us. But in the Bible, it talks about also people losing their heads over not accepting all of this stuff. And man, people don't think that this is.
I can address that real quick on the losing the heads, because I'm like, oh, research matters, right? Because I'm like, It's all there and just nobody knows that it's there. But so It was actually Texas A&M, and this was under the Bush administration, just prior to Obama taking office, and then he re-implemented it at a high level. And it was under the guise of how to conduct corporal punishment in the most humane way possible. That this was the what's the word? Not a lobby, but whatever. When you get funded by the government, I can't think of the word right now.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'll move on. So when you're getting money for the government for research, I don't know why I can't think of the word. And
Like
so
grants or whatever. Yeah.
grants,
Yeah.
yes, this was the federal grant was a longitudinal study on how to find the most humane way to carry out capital punishment through the prison systems. That was the guys that it was carried under, and actually was Texas A&M that operated it. And over, I think it was a 3 or 5 year longitudinal study. So they would do all these different terrible things to rats and mice or whatever, right? To like lethal injection versus, and they went old school, like versus hangings versus firing squads versus whatever, blah, blah, blah. So they did all these different things. And if everybody remembers what was going on during Obama, you had the Jade Helm exercises, right? You had all that he said we need a private military that rivals our own military. This is when all the DHS stuff, the gray state, all like the gnarliest of the gnarly stuff was brought online by Obama. Remember all the MRAP purchases, the GAO, that's the Government Accounting Office purchases for guillotines, 250,000 modern guillotines purchased by the federal government. Where did those go? Where did the 8,000 MRAPs go? Where did the 7 billion rounds of ammo go? Remember when this is when they had the target practices for DHS, and it was pregnant women with children holding guns.
Wow. I didn't remember that. That's
You
crazy.
didn't, yeah, it was like this hyper desensitization campaign. Everybody was certain that the quote unquote big show that we're all aware of was going to happen under this administration. I digress. But just to give the context, this was at the peak of all. By the way, none of that stuff went away. Where is it? Nobody remember, like all the normal saline was pulled out of the hospitals off the shelves and went in underground bases, all that. Like there was a lot happening under those 8 years of Obama. And by the way, all that's still in play. It never went away, including the 250,000 modern guillotines. Look it up. You don't have
People
to
forget
go,
quickly.
ooh, guillotines. It's like, dude, you can go to the manufacturer page that makes them. You don't have, it's not sensational or hyperbolic. It's just if you haven't been exposed to it, you haven't been exposed to it. Okay, I digress.
It's a cheap way to do it too. You don't have to constantly be filling new bullets, new concoctions or whatever. It definitely is cost efficient as well.
Yeah. And so what they found was in this study, looking for the most humane way to conduct corporal punishment, was that they concluded that it was beheading by guillotine. That was Texas A&M study. And they talked about the neurological processes, the post-assault processes, the blah, 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 and what's actually going on, how much is the brain retaining, what's the body feeling, how long do you have that brain-body connection after the head has been removed, and all this stuff is all physiological-based research, was the physiology. That was their finding, was that death by beheading was the most humane way that they could do that. So at the same time that this study is concluding, you have that GAO purchase for 250,000 guillotines. I do have one primary source account, one of a woman outside the Ozarks. There's always a lot going on in the Ozarks because it's the most unique cave system per capita on the face of the earth is the Ozark Mountains.
It's also really
And
concentrated
Springs,
with believers. Very concentrated.
Yes, there's so much going on that Missouri-Arkansas border down in there. But she was a warehouse worker outside Springfield, Missouri, and the crates or whatever they are, 8, 10, 12 feet tall, long, narrow crates. And she's a fork truck operator, and it rocked off the pallet. It was palletized. It rocked off of it and broke open. She physically saw it and she didn't know what it was. And then told me and said, hey, I saw this thing at work. I don't know what it was. I'm like, no way. Like, dude, go get a picture of it because nobody will believe it. Like, that's because everybody's like, oh, speculation. That's speculation. I'm like, no, it's not. You can read the purchase orders. You can read the purchase orders through FOIA for these things. So anyways, yeah. So now you combine all these things, right? So you combine the AI, you combine the surveillance state, you combine the social credit score, you combine the central bank digital currency along with your biometric database, along with your genetic databases with all the PCR tests and genealogy and 23andme.com, like all that's combined. And then you combine your metadata from your socials and from your type text talk, your gait analysis, your voice analysis, your pattern of life analysis. And then you combine all this, and now you roll out humanoid-based things with drone tech-based things, with humane-based ways of dealing with people. And now you see how quick, that's why I say, when the suddenly happens, this whole thing will be online within a matter of 6 weeks, not years. It's not World War II. It's not World War I. It's not a grinding action of high mechanized conventional warfare units clashing. It's going to be cybernetics, technological, biological, maybe a little bit nuclear, just a little bit limited nuclear exchange. It's going to be done in 96 hours. World War III will be done in 96 hours. And then you have the restructuring post World War III with all the economic and geopolitical conglomerations of this stuff. So you can see how quickly all of it would come online.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have that, I guess, AI researchers and people that are constantly warning about the threats of AI. Some of them even were kind of the founders of some of these big companies. They're talking about how Russia, China, US, and the other countries that have their AI, eventually all the AIs will merge into one, because one of them will reach a super intelligence and have the ability to take over, if not kill the other AIs, and take over the entire system. And it seems like we're so close, man. Like you, I've had dreams and visions. These were long ago, actually, from 2010 to 2013. I have a book, actually, it's right here, a book
That's
of
funny.
all of the ones.
That's about the time I had my several
Really?
dreams and visions too. It was right in that same time frame. Yeah.
It's crazy. I haven't had anything like this since, like nothing like
Me
it. Like
neither. Neither
nothing.
have I. Yeah.
And I've been wanting to. I'm like, I wish, but no, I had it. But one of the things that I actually shared this on a broadcast last night, there was I was sitting in my bed when it happened, and an angel grabbed me by the hair and took me up above the United States. And I was looking, I was like, getting my grip on what's going on. And he grabbed my head and turned it to the coast. And he showed me that on the coast was Russia and China, and nobody knew they were even there. Like, nobody had any idea. It was completely, life was going on as normal, and they were there on the coast. And I have no idea to this day exactly what that means, but Russia and China have always been, in a couple dreams that I had too, Russia and China have played a huge role in those dreams. How about you?
That's interesting. That's very similar to, I've had 3 dreams specifically of the invasion and the takeover and takedown of the United States of America. And all 3 dreams, it was Chinese. I've never seen Russians. I know a lot, like Henry Gruver, Dmitry Duduman, A. Allen, and a lot of other people have seen a lot of Russian troops. I never have. They were always Chinese. And it was the same thing where it was a normal day, normal everything, which is biblical.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that at the time as I'm
Yeah.
getting these, but as it was in the days of Noah and the days of Lot, it will be just like that at the coming of the Son of Man. And what it says is everything's normal. That's the context of the days of Noah, days of Lot. It's saying normalcy. It'll be completely normal, which is right now. It is normal. We're aware, like your listeners are aware. John, you're aware. There's other researchers that are aware. We're a very small minority of how late the hour is and all these different connection points. But for the most part, life's totally normal. Like I told you, I'm out here, like I'm getting a vehicle worked on right now or whatever. I can go get ice cream for my kids whenever I want. Like it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that's exactly what it's going to be until the suddenly in an instant. And in all my dreams, it was the Chinese were everywhere all at the same time. It's like that there was no fear. The people had no fear. They came out of their homes in suburban America. And where I saw in particular the invasion was the Columbia River Valley up in the Northwest. That's where I saw them coming in, huge amphibious assault. There's families walking along the seawalls there and enjoying the beauty up there in the Northwest. It's so stunning. And as masses and masses and masses of amphibious assault ships were chugging across all the different sounds and the island chains up there at the mouth of the Columbia River, Puget Sound and all that area, is nobody was scared. They were curious. It
Mm.
was like a novelty. It was like they had no concept to be afraid whatsoever until the ramps dropped and all of them are being lay waste. And
Mm.
every dream I've seen, which three separate ones of Chinese invasions, and I won't go into details of all of them. I've shared it in Red. It's called a Red Horse video, my video on YouTube. Is that they were not interested in any form of cohabitation. It was full xenophilic based genocide
Mm.
against every man, woman, child, and people never were fearful because
Yeah.
it was so quick, it was so instant. They had no concept that there was war, that there was a threat, that there was any. So then when I hear these reports about the amount of shipping containers in Long Beach Harbor, and Long Beach Harbor being owned by China, and Manhattan Island being owned by China, and our
Mm.
national parks mineral rights being owned by China, and the largest purchaser of farmland being by China. And then I hear about, however many thousand-acre ranch on the Rio Grande on the border with Mexico being owned by a Chinese colonel who put in a 10,000-foot runway for heavy lift aircraft on private property. And a friend of mine came from the border, working on the border, said, I am telling you, I physically watched 3 to 8,000 Chinese men a day walk through knee-deep water across the river onto this private ranch.
Wow.
I sat on the
Mm.
Mexico side and watched him for 2 years straight and then be welcomed by Chinese delegates on private property in Texas with a 10,000-foot heavy lift. Like, he's like, I watched it. I'll show you the videos. I'll show you whatever. And so I go, this is how it would happen in an instant. I remember during the pandemic, all the ships being staged off the coast of Southern California at the deep water port that
Mhm.
weren't be allowed to come in. And then there was a hot mic incident from two Chinese generals discussing, this is all white papered. It's not speculation or hyperbole. Two Chinese generals, hot mic incident, talking about which brigades, by what number, by what quantity, with their armaments, with their cruiser weapons, with their whatever, that were in those ships staged off the coast, waiting to be brought in so they could offload all the shipping containers with the cruiser weapons and the troops and everything. Now, then you get into the Chinese, bioweapons lab being found in California, and then you get into Chinese attache to this person and Chinese to this person and the Chinese infiltration of all Ivy League schools at MIT and Harvard and Yale and all the different Ivy League schools. They're all owned by China. Our intellectual property owned by China. China being brought in to do our Grid X1 and Grid X2 drills by Obama again. China and Russia were brought in by Obama to conduct a Grid X1 and Grid X2 drills where they were trained how to take offline our power grid in a cascading way that wouldn't collapse it and then bring it back online at the appointed time. Then you have the Chinese spy balloons being allowed to collect our data of our terrestrial-based nuclear missile sites by the Biden administration. It goes on and on and on and on and on. So you can see how your dream, my dream, other people's warnings, that that it will happen when they're ready, because we've been sold out from within, right?
Mhm.
When they're ready, it will happen instantly, and nobody will have any context for what is happening.
Yeah, man, they control so much of our power grids. They make most of our solar panels and Chinese products, and it rings a bell to what happened in Lebanon. I was in Lebanon last year, and we left maybe a month before the pager incident. And according to sources, those pagers had been they had those set up for that for a long time before
Long
they
time.
actually used it. And it can, like, everything we have almost in the United States is from China. And how hard would it be for them to implement that into some of the products, or maybe they already have, that they've had here for a long time? It's really to think about it, and to think about that Trump, as hard as he talks against all this stuff, like, ultimately, I haven't heard him say too much about some of the stuff you're talking about. Maybe a little.
Yeah, the Chinese thing is a big deal because it's actually not, how would you say it? They It hasn't been through subterfuge. That's the thing is like there's not some like super secret squirrel, espionage thing going on here. It's not, they've been invited in.
Yeah.
That's what the key component that people don't understand is it's being allowed to happen because it's part and parcel to a restructuring of the global order.
Yeah.
And actually, you can watch videos of Bush, and you can read different documents from him from the late 70s, early 80s. Bush Senior, by the way, specifically talking about how they were going to open up China, right? Because it's all like Forbidden City, closed off, Hermit Kingdom, all that kind of stuff. How they were going to infiltrate China, open the Chinese corridor. Then they were going to ship all manufacturing, the vast majority, the lion's share of all manufacturing and intellectual property and productivity to China because of the cheap labor. And they were going to allow the Chinese economy to explode. Any of this sound familiar? You can watch him saying this in the late 70s. You can watch it on video. Any of this sound familiar, right? And how they were going to artificially create this Chinese institution of the Chinese government through the CCP that they actually would control through Hong Kong, which, by the way, has always been owned by the British. Everything goes back to the City of London. We can talk about that another time, but and that China is actually a puppet at the end of the day of the U.S. oligarch-based, Western-centric-based. I don't even like using the word deep state. It's too stupid of a word, but like just that underbelly, right? The hidden hand of the power from Bank of International Settlements, IMF and all that kind of, all the Western-centric institutions. China is an artificially created thing. Bush, it says it plainly with his mouth. And he said, at the appointed time, sometime in the early 2000s into the 2020s, then we're going to pivot and we'll say that China is our chief number one enemy and our primary competitor. And then we're going to control demolition China and pivot everything back to the West, but we're going to use them. Yeah, I mean, these guys are insane. It's kind of like if you remember that general talking way like pre 9/11, like first we're going to take out Iraq, and then we're going to take out Libya, and then we're going to take out Syria, and then ultimately we're going to get to Iran. And it's like, I just pay attention to what they say. If they say it, I believe them because they walk out exactly what they tell you they're going to walk out. So here we are with this Chinese quote unquote infiltration, but is it? Is it an infiltration? I mean, the Clinton State Department sold all of our mineral rights and our national parks to the Chinese. They own our national parks. They physically own Manhattan, the island. I'm not saying necessarily all the buildings and stuff, but the physicality of the island itself, it was collateral on our debt. And then they own it. And it's like our entire power grid is by our military industrial complex is built by Chinese tech companies that then we put into the majority of our different intermediate long-range missile systems. All of our basic and everything signal intelligence base is coming out from China, and they know there's a back door into all of those different tech components. They know that, and they don't care. So what does that tell you?
And even the 61 bomb, I don't know if you've heard of that. I think it's 61 or 71. I heard the Chinese, speaking of it, the 29th, I believe it was, they started doing their, I forgot what they called it, something mission, where they are surrounding Taiwan, doing their war games. And they said that if the U.S. attacks them, they'll never attack first, but if the U.S. attacks them, they'll unleash this 61 bomb. And what it is 60 atomic weapons and 1 hydrogen bomb. And he said that we're the only ones in the world that have hydrogen bombs. And he said it can be implemented in 20 minutes without being traceable. And in my mind, I'm thinking the only way that's possible is if it's already here, like it's already here on the grounds for that to happen, for them to be able to implement it and untraceable within 20 minutes. At least I don't know much about tech, advanced tech like DARPA's using. I mean, they're not going to tell me what they have. But when I think about that, I'm like, man, that like them owning all these properties, how hard would it be for them to have something like that, especially if they're unchecked?
Yeah, and I can't, don't quote me on this, but as far as our intermodal shipping container, which is, usually, maritime based. Very minimal of it is trucking. A lot of it's maritime based, and still, believe it or not, rail. Most people don't. The only reason why I know these things is because I was a firefighter and a paramedic, and I'm on a tech rescue team. So I had a like hazmat technician, and then worked a lot with different FEMA agencies and stuff like that. So I had to know all these random stuff. So as I say things, it's because I had to like work in that world
Right.
for a long time. But like the intermodal shipping containers and stuff like that, is most people don't understand is still it's 92% of all goods are transported by maritime, by ship. Within the continental United States, 80% of all goods are still transported by rail. So very little of it is actually related to trucking. It's by rail. And a lot of it comes through these intermodal shipping containers. And I don't quote me on this. I can't remember how many tens of millions of shipping containers there are in the world, and how many tens of millions come through our several deep water ports uh, annually within the continental United States. And of those shipping containers, it's less than 5% are inspected.
Mm.
Did everybody hear that?
Wow.
Less than 5% are inspected. Okay, now taking that in consideration, they've already unlocked and found several tens of shipping containers with cruiser weapons in them from China already. And they're only checking 5%, right?
Man.
And they found heavy machine guns. They found components for mortar systems. So that's your indirect mortar systems, artillery pieces. They found broken down light infantry vehicles inside these. You can put anything in a shipping container, right? They found components in order to make semi-automatic weapons and fully automatic weapons of Chinese and Russian variants. They found all kinds of stuff, not to mention all these different aspects. So when we talk about what is actually contained within the United States of America, we could never know. And one of the beautiful things about America is that we are a melting pot. It is cool. I love it. I mean, America really is, as wicked as governments are, America as an experiment truly is unique.
Yeah,
And
you have to
you should
separate the two.
contend
You have
for
to
it.
separate the
You
government
have to,
from the
yeah,
people, because
from the
they're, like you
people.
said, they're globalists, internationalists. They have their own plan,
Right.
and then we, the people, have our own ideas.
Yes,
Yeah.
America is very unique. I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that you can have private ownership, that you can have land, that's unheard of anywhere else in the world. Like unheard of. Upward mobility, there's no caste system, like unheard of. Like, so there's these unbelievably beautifully unique aspects to the United States of America that nowhere in, not only on the face of the earth, but nowhere in human history have ever existed before until this nation. So that's why you had those competing interests of the evildoers, the Adam Westhops, the Freemasons, the Illuminists, the whatever, the occultists, and then you have just normal people. The normal people is what makes America so awesome. But where I'm going with that is to say, because of the melting pot nature of the United States of America, is we are the most easily infiltrated country on the face of the earth, because we don't have a ethnic national identity like everywhere else. We are a melting pot. So I was talking to a general. Okay. I'll leave it at that. I won't use his name without his permission. I was talking to a general, and I said, tell me, I always am checking, like, am I being sensational? Because I don't want to be sensational because it discredits you, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I've been saying for a long time that there's 2.5 million active duty military personnel from China inside the US. Those are the numbers I'm hearing. 2.5 million. By the way, that already surpasses our United States military. These are plainclothes people all over the US. He laughed at me. He goes, 2.5 million? I go, yeah, I'm like, but I don't want to sound sensational. I know that's a lot. And he goes, try upwards of 12 million.
Wow.
He goes, not only you're not being sensational, you're not adequately warning the people. He goes, millions upon millions. And we all know it. We're all aware. We get briefings on it, and nobody's allowed to do anything about it. He said, everywhere. They're everywhere. And again, because of the nature of the melting pot of America, and you go, surely we would notice 12 million infiltrators. I'm like, would you? Have you been to California? Have you been to Pasadena? Have you been to the Northwest?
Yeah.
Have you been to some of the other major urban environments, in particular on the East Coast and whatever? I'm like, You would never know. We are a melting pot of who knows what. Like, it doesn't matter if they're Middle Eastern, it doesn't matter if they're Asian or Eurasian or European or African or South African, like we are such a melting pot that you can come in anywhere from anywhere, anytime, and nobody bats an eye at any ethnic disparities. If we were left to ourselves, most people would be pretty normal. They just want to be left alone and they want to work hard and then go to sleep at night, right? Like that's the simplicity of human experience. Anyways, all that to say is the infiltration aspect of it within the continental United States is complete because it's easy. It's very easy. And it's been allowed to flourish. It wasn't just Biden. It began in the Obama administration, came to its final completion. That's why all the numbers and the data is and dropping the borders and doing all, because they were trying to hit a particular milestone mark, and now it's done. So it's a done deal. So all this border stuff, don't take the bait. Don't take the emotionally predatory bait of what's going on with the immigration, the ICE agents, and even the border crisis stuff. It's a done deal. And I know guys on the border. I know guys that are from CAG, right? So they're ODA dudes or whatever. And Green Beret bros, I know former SEAL, former team dudes or whatever, some MARSOC bros and all these guys. Like they're always operating. Like I know these guys. I've been invited to go on longitudinal, 3 to 6 month deployments on the border to keep operating with these guys in a private sector capacity. And all they talk about is the amount of Chinese and Middle Eastern by the thousands a day coming across the border, and they're being told to stand down by DHS overseers on site. Let them through, let them through, let them through, let them through. Not so much anymore under this new administration, but that's what had been happening under the previous administration.
It's mind-blowing. And Jaimie, I want to thank you for coming on. I'm going to have your links to your YouTube channel, also your website, Walden Dynamics, in here. But is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with last before we shut this down?
Yeah, I would say 2026, and I know we've been working this for a long time, guys like you and I and many others out there that were trailblazers for us. Where it's easy to sound like a Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Yeah. But it's like if you pay attention and you go back to each year as we do evaluate years and we look at, it's actually all happened. But because it's not punching you in the mouth, nobody receives it, which is actually prophetic fulfillment. That it's going to seem normal, but it's not. Everything we've ever talked about has happened, is happening, and is currently in play. And there isn't any conspiratorial nature to it or a sensationalistic hyperbolic nature to it. It just is. So it's a matter of whether or not we want to wake up and accept the reality of the lateness of the hour. And if we do accept the lateness of the hour, then that requires a response from us. Primarily that you repent, for the day of the Lord is at hand, and that you would solidify yourself in Christ alone, and Christ alone, and Christ, because governments are going to fail you, people are going to fail you, economies are going to fail you, the churches are going to fail you, the pastors are going to fail you, your home groups are going to fail you, your little intimate communities are going to fail you, brother are going to betray brother. Everything is going to flip upside down. So if your identity isn't in the sufficiency of Christ in all, for all, over you in your life unto eternity, so that you can stand blameless, so that you can stand in his presence blameless and with great joy on the day of the Lord, nothing else matters. So the only thing that matters is that in light of the information, it should cause an appropriate response, which is that you would gird up the loins of your mind for action, and you would solidify yourself in Christ alone, because everything else is going to burn and fail you and betray you at your moment of greatest need. And secondarily is don't take the bait. I keep telling people all the time, the emotionally predatory nature of the soundbitey world around you, don't take the bait. Don't take the bait to the good. There's good things that this administration is doing. Don't take the bait. It's taking you somewhere. Don't take the bait to the bad. It's emotionally predatory. It's vampiristic in its nature. It's taking you somewhere. You got to stay the course, with a soundness of mind. That's sophroneo in the Greek. That means a mind that has been rescued, salvaged, or delivered from illogical, absurd, or highly emotional thoughts. That is the mind of Christ that we have been told that we have. We've not been given a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and sophroneo. Go dig into what it means to have this sound mind. So we who are in Christ shouldn't be unhinged to this pendulum swing or unhinged to that pendulum swing. We should be walking very circumspectly with our God and actually be bold, resilient, radiant, steadfast, resolute, conquering and being more than conquerors, overcoming. We're to turn many back to righteousness. It says those who are wise in the Lord will turn many back to righteousness in that day, the time of likes of which never has been and never will be again. We will shine like stars in the vast expanse of the universe from ever to everlasting. We are told that those who know their God will be strong through the Lord, back to the glory of God, and go forth and do daring feats of valor. So there's unique qualifiers for those with ears to hear amid the throes of all this stuff breaking out. There is good news, very good news, but you have to understand the bad news to understand why it's such good news. The good news is exceedingly good because the bad news is exceedingly bad. And that's why it's the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? So
thank you so much. That's so important for people to understand. I'm glad you added that to the end, because there is no other way. There's no real hope outside of that, because we see what's coming, and hopefully you guys do too. Pound the subscribe button, pound the like button, guys, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, Jaimie, for coming on.
The world keeps lying, but he won't retreat on his quest for truth. Yeah. Truth, quest for truth. They can't stop me, they can't block me. Moving through, got that fire, they can't block me. Quest for truth, breaking chains.